Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our DFS and betting preview for this week's Bermuda Championship. Gonna get you guys ready for all of your exposure. But first off, a breakdown of the golf course and how I'm expecting Port Royal Golf Club to play. That'll include my key stats, some comp courses that I'm using to help identify my top options. And then afterwards, we're gonna cycle into my top pieces of exposure for this week, my top DFS plays, also some value plays to help you save some salary, and my outright betting card, which last week we ended up hitting Ben Griffin at 13.2 to 1 to win. Let's see if we can run it back with back-to-back outright winners. And we're gonna go ahead and go over some of my top pieces of exposure there. So by the end, you'll have some stuff to tail, some plays that you might want to potentially add to some lineups of your own. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get this thing going. Port Royal Golf Club is the home this week, and it is the shortest course that we have on the PGA Tour. So immediately people are thinking about more positional players off the tee, but that's not necessarily the case. This is much more about scoring the par fives, even some of the shorter par fours you can take on with a driver if you're a bomber. So we're going to focus on a few other key stats than maybe what you see in some of the other content this week. So first and foremost, we have approach play, which you want to narrow down to your wedges. And because of all the layups that are forced off the tee around here, it's going to be a lot of shots from 100 to 150 yards. So if you're going to add some extra emphasis, you could do it with that short bucket, 120 to 150, even 150 to 175 might be utilized a little bit more than most tour courses. So that on top of form over the last 24 and last 12 rounds is something you should for sure be incorporating this week. We've also got putting stats and Bermuda grass greens from tip to toe, as you'd expect in Bermuda. And because this is a birdie fest, it is a short course. Whether you're a bomber, whether you're somebody that's setting up birdie looks with your wedges, you're going to have to capitalize from 5 to 10 feet. So putting over the last 24 and 12 rounds, also on the Bermuda grass surface, this is a baseline. This is not a recent form metric. It's something that I'm personally looking at this week. Also, birdie or better percentage, barring any sort of nasty wins over this event, we're going to get something close to minus 20 winning. Off the tee, it's a very balanced golf course. I mentioned that it is the shortest track that we have on the PGA Tour, but if you're a bomber, there are certainly spots you could take advantage of that. So I want a good mix of off the tee players that are long and more accurate, but it's not the main thing we're looking at. It's down there at number 4. The scoring stats are ahead of it, and then of course that wedge play. And you can't ignore around the green at this golf course either. We did ignore it the last couple events that we went through, but you miss a few more greens around the Bermuda Championship, although they are large greens at about 8,000 square foot. Part of it is the Bermuda rough makes it really hard to judge the distance out of it, but also the winds that'll kick up. So around the green important in those scenarios, but also with scoring on the par 5s and short par 4s. If you're a bomber, around the green play is going to be especially important for those players so they can capitalize on top of that power and when they set themselves up for good scoring looks. But a couple comp courses I've gotten on top of that would be the Sony Open Whaley Country Club, short Bermuda grass track with a lot of forced layups off the tee, a lot of similar characteristics to what we have this week. And then Central Country Club, the home of the Wyndham Championship, is a little bit longer. It's about 7,100 yards, but similar setup, Bermuda grass agronomy, and also a much more positional course than it is about the distance. So if you're looking for a leaderboard crossover, if you want to take a look at the last 3 or 4 years at both of those golf courses, I think you could find that rather useful for this week as well. But putting it all together, we're looking for guys that can score, especially with the putter. That is probably the most important key stat that we have. Approach play is always going to be at number 1 in the modeling, but putting is emphasized a lot more at this course than what we see elsewhere. So when we get into our exposure, it's no surprise that our first core play at $9,700 is going to be a putting specialist in Nicolas Echavarria. I got him at 22.5 to 1, and I boosted that up 10% to just under 25 to 1. And although if we take a look at the recent form tab over here, he doesn't look like he's been playing that well, that is extremely misleading. So if we take a look at the last 12 shots gained rounds that he has, he's number 99 out of 120 with recent form ranking. But if you take a look at his actual results, so if we go over here to the recent form tab, you see that that is not really accurate. He finished T14 at the Worldwide Technologies. There are no shot link data from that event, so that's why it looks a little bit worse. And then same thing at the Bay Current. He finished top 10 at that event, and that had some legit guys like Xander in the field, Colin Morikawa. It wasn't a complete pushover field like what we've had for the last couple weeks, and he managed the top 10 there. So you'd have to imagine if those shots gained metrics were included, that he'd be gaining a lot more significantly to the field. So if that's going to keep the ownership lower and that's going to keep people off of clicking his name, then I'm going to gladly take advantage of that in large field GPPs, because from the course fit perspective, he is exactly what we're looking for. And we could start with the putting over the last 24 rounds. He's been okay putting, typically a lot better than that, still gaining about 0.2 strokes per round. We go to the last 12 measured rounds, he's also just been okay. But if you take a look at the 2025 stats for the entire season, Echavarria is a top 25 player on tour in the category. He's somebody that makes a whole bunch of putts from 5 to 10 feet. And the reason why I think that this golf tournament in particular is the one where we could see that come back around is because of the stats on Bermuda. And for his career, Bermuda grass has been by far his most consistent and best category that he's had on tour, gaining about 0.9 shots gained putting per round on Bermuda grass. That is about 0.7 strokes better than that 24 round baseline. And if he's getting back to gaining 0.8 to 1 stroke putting per round, this is going to be an extremely dangerous player. And it's not just the fact that the last couple events have been those top 15s for him, but the last round he played last week at the Worldwide Technologies, I think he had 10 birdies out of his 18 holes. He clearly had that putter working. And if the putter, that on top of the wedge play, he's particularly good from 150 to 100 yards as well, with a lot of the approach shots in the spot where a lot of those are going to come from. He just sets up perfectly for this track. So in DFS, I'm hoping that'll come with lower ownership as well, because some of those recent form metrics are throwing people off. And if we take a look at the event history, it's not that substantial. He has played here at least the last 3 years and has 3 made cuts over that stretch. But a T29, a T23 is not going to get there. Certainly not a T76 is not going to pay off this kind of price tag. We need him to step up that course history and to at the very least get us a top 10, but we'll be hoping for that win at just a little bit less than 25 to 1. Next play is going to be Vince Whaley at 33 to 1 to win. He has $9,000 in DFS, and he's another putting first player. And if we go to the last 24 rounds, he's been one of the best putters that we've had in the entire field. So over that sample size, you can see Whaley is gaining 1.67 shots gained putting per round over the last 12 round sample size. So if we zoom in a bit more and get an idea of that, it falls off to him actually losing strokes putting. But just like Echavarria, he's a player that on Bermuda grass is one of the best putters that we have on tour. In fact, it is his best surface, gaining 0.7 strokes per round on Bermuda. So that sample size over the last 24 rounds where he was killing it with the putter, absolutely lighting it up. And then recently, some of the other events that he's played have also not have shots gained metrics. So although he's losing 0.3 strokes putting per round, that's because of one single event throwing off that sample size. So once again, when you get into the fall swing and we have events that do and do not have the shots gained metrics, it really starts to throw people off. So you have to be looking at an individual basis. You have to look at every single event, figure out exactly where these shots gained metrics are being pulled from so that you're not getting completely fooled by them. And this last 24 round sample size is much more indicative of what we've seen from Vince Whaley for this year, which is a very stout short game player and somebody that can struggle at times off the tee. And because this is a layup golf course, there are holes where you can take advantage of his distance. He is maybe not a bomber, but an above average distance player most weeks on tour. The par fives will be able to leverage that. But on the tighter holes, the ones where there's a little bit more trouble that can come into play, he doesn't have to hit driver. It is the literal shortest golf course that we have on the PGA Tour. So if he wants to hit an iron and take all of that risk out of play, it's why I like guys like Whaley this week that usually have that off the tee risk that's not going to be nearly as present at this golf course. And I think that that's how you can really take advantage of it being the shortest course on tour. A lot of people are going to be flocking to your shorter players and think that like by default that they're just going to have an amazing week. They've still got to have other things going for them, like the Bermuda grass putting. For Vince Whaley, he's one of the best birdie makers that we have on tour. Same thing with Echavarria. Both of those players, top 50 birdie makers that we've had in all of 2025. And considering that this is a weak field event, that is a very impressive number for both of those two players. That's what matters. That plus some good Bermuda grass putting is, I think, the recipe for success this week. If you guys want to find every single bet that I'm taking, you guys can find those over there on my Patreon page. That's also where you can download these spreadsheets with all of my modeling and all my projections for these weeks. On there, everything that is blacked out will be completely uncensored for all of my members. I've got recent form over the last 6 events for everyone in the field. Also, event history over the last 5 years at Port Royal Golf Club. Also, the last 24 rounds, the last 12 measure rounds, completely covered from the shots gained perspective. And on the key stats tab we were going through before, you can also see my exact custom modeling weightings here towards the right side so that you can reproduce the model for yourself. So all of that by downloading this sheet on the DFS sheet, that can be found via the Golf DFS tier on my Patreon page. Link down below to get access to that. Highly recommend checking it out if you guys haven't haven't already. It costs less than all the other big DFS sites that are out there, and you get much more detailed analysis than what you're getting with those. Most of them aren't giving you a full database of stats to go through. The course history, you usually have to go from website to website. It takes a whole lot of time just to research one player. You have literally everything you need on these players at your fingertips that you can just go seconds at a time to get to, which infinitely speeds up your process. Not only giving you less time, are you able to, spend more time with your family, your friends, doing the things that you like to do, but also you're able to do more thorough research, because it's exhausting going from web page to web page, having to track down all these different data points for these players. And when I was newer to DFS, I started this spreadsheet on my own before I even started doing content, because I didn't want to spend all of that time, and I found it extremely valuable. In fact, so much so that I thought I could make a business behind it. So if you guys want to check that out, if you haven't already joined the Golf DFS tier, what are you waiting for? It's an absolute no-brainer. Only $15 a month for everything that you guys are seeing on here, not only for main slate, but also for showdown through rounds 2 through 4. Rounds 2 through 4, that's Friday through Sunday showdown. We have all of the spreadsheets covered for all of those plays and projections catered for that specific round. It's not like other websites where they'll just reproduce the stuff from showdown, from main slate, and then use it for showdown. Not going to call out anyone in particular, but there's a lot of websites that do that don't cater their ownership projections either to the leaderboard, to the kind of trends that you'd expect to see from day to day. We're truly the sweaty tryhards here of the Gsluke DFS community, and we'd be proud to have you. So again, click that link if you guys haven't already. Let's go through our last two plays. So first off, it's going to be Takumi Kanaya at $7,900, and he is one of the shortest players on tour, but that's not necessarily why I like Kanaya here. Kanaya has been in really good form over the last couple months. He won on the Asian Tour. He's had some top 20 finishes on the PGA Tour during this fall swing as well. In the last couple weeks, he was mega chalk, despite it being a really bad course fit, and I couldn't get there myself. It's not like he's played poorly over that stretch. In fact, if you played Kanaya recently, you're okay with it. At least made the cut last week, T33, but the T4 is the kind of performance that we're looking for. This golf course, though, is as perfect for him as you could possibly imagine, because as one of the shortest players on the PGA Tour, any course over like 7,300 yards, he's really struggled at. So that's why that made cut, that T63 last week, even that T33 the week before that, at two bomber style golf courses, is actually a pretty good sign. It's actually pretty positive for him to be able to go out there and do that, despite him being such a short player there. But this golf course, that is not going to be a problem. He's somebody that can lean into the elite short game. He's one of the best around the green players that we have on tour. So if he gets out of position, I feel pretty good about him, giving himself at least a 4 to 5 footer to save par in most cases. And he's also a player that is a good putter. Now, on the Bermuda grass surface, he doesn't have the biggest sample size. He hasn't played a whole lot on the PGA Tour, just, a little bit of a sample from 2025. But if you take a look at his recent putting stats, and especially the around the green as well, he's gaining over a stroke between those two categories. And that's over the last 24 rounds, so that's giving ourselves a pretty wide range of outcomes to look at. If you zoom in once again, though, this is where the small sample size gets thrown off by some of the events without shots gained metrics. It says that he's losing short game, but gaining almost 1.2 strokes between the ball striking categories. I mean, I'm okay with that, right? Takumi Kanaya being a ball striking first player isn't always what we think of when we're clicking on him and looking at these sort of stats, but he hit the ball well in the recent event where we actually had that shot link data. But historically, he's more of that short game player, which is fitting this style of golf course. That's why I think that this kind of track sets up even better for him than what he had with some of those recent made cuts, and is why I'm taking him for the top 10 bet. So I'm not betting him to win this thing. I think that there's players with more upside than him that I could see just narrowly edging him out. But for a top 10 bet at plus 440, I think it makes a whole lot more sense. So I got that at plus 400. I did boost that 10% to plus 440. It's not even the best number in the industry at that number. It's just what I have available at Hard Rock Bet. It's unfortunate, but they have a monopoly down here in Florida, so we just kind of have to take the odds that they give us on some of these plays. But it's not the worst, especially with that boost via 10%, and especially with the course fit, somebody that I'll be using in my DFS lineups. And the last couple weeks, he had carried that ownership, and he didn't really pay off with that T63 the last time out. I'm hoping that keeps the ownership in check, where he's not going to be somebody that's like 10 to 15% owned. If he's closer to that 8 to 10% range, I'm going to be glad to play him in 15 to 20% of my lineups and get over that 2x leverage mark. And the last player we're going to go through is going to be another top 10 bet. That's going to be Andrew Putnam at $7,100, and I played him for the top 10 at plus 660. So I got that at plus 600, did boost that 10% to get that plus 660 number. And just like Kanaya, he's another player that's not a very long player off the tee, more of a positional player, but really good on Bermuda grass. For his career, gaining about a half a stroke per round on the Bermuda surface. And unlike Kanaya, he does have a massive sample size to work with, so that is a reliable 0.5 shots per round that he's been gaining. And if we take a look at how he's been playing over the last 24 and the last 12 measured rounds, he's been quietly one of the better players in this range. And the one real weakness has been the off the tee play, which this is the one course on tour where off the tee means the least, I would say, of any of the courses. Like, if your big weakness is off the tee and you're really good from fairway and in, like Webb Simpson sort of skill set, I mean, you're just tailor-made to tear this place apart. Last 12 measured rounds, so if we zoom in a little bit more, again, the smaller sample size stuff really starts to get blown off and thrown off because of the guys that don't have their actual shot link data. He's getting 1.5 shots gained approach per round, though. So kind of like Kanaya, when we've seen him actually play and we have the shot link data to work with, he's been one of the most impressive players that we have in this range, but I don't think that that's the most reliable metrics to use. So he's losing short game, losing putting over that stretch, which is a bit of a red flag, but get him back on this Bermuda grass surface, which compared to his last 24 round baseline, by the way, last 24 rounds, he's not been his best on the greens. He's actually losing almost 0.6 strokes per round with his putter. On this surface, though, he's over a half stroke gained into the positive. That's a 1.1 shot difference between that sample size and his baseline. So that's where I use this category to really find some of the players that are sleeper plays for that particular week, because you can find people that maybe weren't trending the best with the putter heading in that are playing on a comfortable surface for them that might end up fixing that aspect of their game. And if he fixes that aspect of the game and he gains like 1.4, 1.5 shots gained approach per round again, he's going to be right up there in contention. So that's the idea with the top 10 bet. A top 10 also probably pays off in DFS. So those sort of players, very usable in that format. And a Putnam, a Kanaya, we'd mentioned the Kanaya stinker performance the week before, maybe keeping the ownership lower, but because Putnam is $7,100 and there are just so many other players priced in the same range, I can't see him being over like 6 to maybe 7% ownership at their very most. And if he's going to be anywhere from 7% and lower in large scale GPPs, and I'm going to be over that 2x leverage mark as well. Alrighty guys, that is all I've got for the DFS and betting preview. Go ahead, smash that like button if you haven't already. Also subscribe to the channel so you guys don't miss any of the content to come. That will include our Wednesday live stream at 7 p.m. Eastern time, going through any questions that you've got for me in the live chat, weather report, ownership in the large field GPPs. We're also going to be breaking down underdog and prize picks props for round 1 of this event. Make sure to subscribe so you guys don't miss when we go live with that, but also all the content for rounds 2 through 4. We got showdown covered, also props on underdog and prize picks that we'll be covering here on the YouTube channel. So make sure you get notified when all of those go live. And also go ahead and comment down below who you've got winning this golf tournament. And if you end up getting the correct winner, you'll win a free month on my Patreon page. And obviously last week we got the Ben Griffin outright. That was pretty sweet. We're going to try and add on top of it for this week's exposure. But give me your winner. And if you're the first person to guess that correct winner this week, you'll win free month access to everything on my Patreon. And that includes all the golf projections for showdown and for main slate the next couple days, and also all the prop stuff we have in underdog and prize picks. So go ahead, claim your player before anyone else ends up stealing them from you. Best of luck with that. Also with any of your exposure in the large field GPPs. I hope to see some of your names towards the top end of those contests. Let's cash out on some of our prop exposure, maybe with a second outright in a row. That would be pretty sweet. And let's have ourselves a week.